Ireland, there's not many, there are some differences, not many differences, but we're usually, big lovers of tea, but I don't think you and I could be friends because you do not like tea.
No, apparently I was told that we can't be friends. I don't drink tea. And I only drink, I started drinking coffee when I went to America, so I really like what they call over there ass-flavoured coffee. It's just like ordinary filter coffee. And I can't stand the fact that there's a Nazism in Ireland and England of espresso-based bloody drinks. And an Americano, you try giving that to an American and see what they do with it.
Oh, I know. I have family from the States, and whenever they come over, they're just like, what is this?
What the hell is this Americano shit? They go.
Exactly. But welcome. You're not a stranger to our shores. You've been here a few times.
No, I've been here many times. My family came from here in 1943, just after the war. And I've come back regularly. The first time I came to Dublin was in 1977, and I brought my dad over. He hadn't been here since he left as a boy, as a 15-year-old in 1943, and he said, I'd love to go and see the house where I was born and grew up. And so I said, where is it? It's Dominic Street. So we bought a map, and we found out where Dominic. He couldn't remember where Dominic. He said, I think it's near the bus station. So we went there, and as we got there, it was really moving actually. As we got there, the wrecking ball was just about to knock his house down. And then what was very funny was 2 years ago I came over here to do this Comic-Con. We all know what happened, and it was cancelled while I was on the plane, and I thought, well, I've got nothing else to do, I'll go and see what they put up instead of my dad's house. And they were just about to knock down the flats they built where my dad grew up. So there's a very high turnover of homes here in Dublin, I noticed.
Just a bit, yeah. Every corner there's always some sort of like building going on.
I know, it's extraordinary. Well, I mean, I hardly recognise walking down the river.
Neither do we.
It's extraordinary.
And how was the last 2 years for you? Because of course, like for us, it was actually on our Facebook on this day that yesterday was the 2-year anniversary of when we actually announced that we had to postpone. And of course, yourself was already en route. We barely caught Michael Cutlets before he was getting on the plane. So like, how were the last 2 years for yourself?
Well, a number of lucky things happened. One was that just before COVID hit, I decided that nobody was appreciating my voice well enough on documentaries and for cartoons and things. So I installed myself some professional recording equipment. So I was managing to do that for a little while. And then sort of what happened, and I've met a lot of older actors who said this, that they've, over the 2 years, they have managed to work with some younger people who've tried to get little films and shorts together that you perhaps normally wouldn't have been available for. So I've worked with some very interesting young filmmakers, and I think you will notice this year that all of the films made in 2020, people seem to be standing extraordinarily far apart for some bizarre reason, and future generations will wonder why that happened. And why they've all got masks just here, around their throats.
Or those little lines around the nose from where the mask is.
Exactly, or the one under the eye there, like that. Yeah.
Well, you have quite the extensive back catalogue, I have to say, and one of your first gigs, I think, was probably also a massive one, especially for a young actor starting out, Bond.
Oh my God, yes. I had been out of drama school, I think, about 8 months, and I was sent along to Pinewood to go. This is how different things were in those days. Any young actors out there will know that there's so many audition processes and self-taping and all this stuff. The way I got the Bond gig was that I was sent out to Pinewood, the studios outside London, with a photograph of myself and a resume, and I was onto the set and I handed it to the director and he went, yeah, okay, and I got the job. As it happens, what I didn't realise was, I mean, I thought I was made, I thought it was about time before I got an Oscar, and that sort of thing. As it happens, it was The Spy Who Loved Me, which, for those of you who've seen it, has 3 submarine crews in it. And what the director was doing was, he decided, as well as all the extras or supernumeraries, he would hire a couple of actors for each one, in case he needed to throw a line out. So I was one of those, and I was never ever given a line, although Roger Moore did throw me a gun at one point.
And is it true that you never actually got to see the result of him throwing you the gun because of the way that it was shot?
Well, I wasn't invited to the premiere, and of course, I only saw the film on television over the years, and of course, televisions used to be square, so they'd cut the edge off. So the bit where I caught the gun and then shot a man in an orange uniform, I didn't see it till about 2002, and I got a widescreen camera, and finally saw my performance in the film.
You're like, oh look, there I am. I was actually in it.
Yeah. Oh look at all that hair.
And for a young actor to be on a set like that experience must have been quite the learning curve.
Oh, it was mind-blowing. You know, I knew nothing about making films, and I found myself on the biggest set in Europe. And absolutely extraordinary meeting Roger Moore and all these people. It just felt amazing, really.
What was Roger Moore like? Because it was I've gotten to meet Timothy Dalton over the years, and he was one of my favourite Bonds, but Roger Moore was another one who I would have loved to have met, because I heard that he was gas crack.
He was gas crack. It's very hard to tell a story about... I see we have hands up if you're under the age of 15. Shit. 15. It's very hard to tell a story about Roger Moore without using the F word, I'm afraid. So, because he used it all the time. So, yeah, maybe you don't, but I think your mum and pa might. But no, he was one of the most foul-mouthed men I've ever met, in a very funny sort of way. But he was very nice, and he was very generous and friendly with everyone. And you know, he didn't treat you differently whether you were an extra or a director or whatever. He was great like that. An egalitarian, I think, is the word we use.
And over the years, you worked quite extensively through in theatre as well as on the screen. But one credit that, and I have to say, even when I saw you in Paris the Caribbean, my brain automatically went, that's your man from Spice World. Some people might be too young to remember Spice World, the Spice Girls movie. So for those of you who know the Spice Girls band, they made a movie and somebody was in it. When you got that call to say, it's like, oh, like the Spice Girls are making a movie, did your brain kind of go, what?
It did, my brain did go what, actually, but it was really interesting because just before then, I was in the theatre and I hadn't made a film for about 8 years, and I realised, you know, that you fall off lists, as they say, and so I wasn't going up for films, I wasn't in films. So I decided to stop working and only do films, and it didn't matter whether it was a small part. So I sort of phoned up everyone I knew, and a friend of mine was called Peter Howard, and he put me in a very small part in a thing called Sliding Doors. And then it got round that I was trying to get credentials as a film actor, and the guy who directed Spice World had directed me in a sitcom about 10 years before. And so he phoned up and said, well look, if you're really trying to get some filming credits, there's a policeman at the end of Spice World that I think you'd be marvellous at playing. So he offered me the part, and I did it. It was great.
It just seemed like everybody that worked on that film just had the most fun ever. Was it as fun on the day as well?
It was, apart from the fact, it's a bad story here, but there was a bit of a rupture at the end of it, because I appeared at the end of it as the policeman in the concert, you know, screaming for the concert, and the boxer Frank Bruno was sitting next to me. He subsequently got into a fight with the guys on the door. He was very angry with them for some reason, and I think he punched somebody, and so he got fired. And Meatloaf, the late Meatloaf, they had to reshoot him doing the role. But Frank was an interesting fella, because I don't think he realised I was an actor. So for the whole scene, he was going, no mate, look, you've got to wave your hands about a bit more, okay? Wave your hands about a bit more, and try to look like you're enjoying it. And I went, yeah, all right, Frank, yeah, okay, I'll try. But next time, you know, maybe defend yourself a bit better when you're having a punch-up in the ring. So he rather spoiled the day for me, I have to say.
But what a story to tell, though. Well,
yeah, you heard it here first.
So we'll get to the aforementioned pirate film that you've been in,
yes.
But I can't have you here at a Comic-Con without talking about Supernatural.
Oh yes, Supernatural.
Because Supernatural is just one of those shows that everybody just seemed to absolutely love. And for you coming in quite at a later stage of the cycle as well, Frank, wasn't it?
Season 7, Frank Devereaux, yeah.
But everybody just seemed to take to him so well, because like some characters were, like some people loved or some people didn't like, but Frank definitely was on the love side.
Oh, definitely. It was weird for me because I'd never heard of the show. It was on the CW network and I never watched that. So what was weird is I shot it and people would go, oh, you know about the Leviathans and things. I'd be going, yes, of course, the Leviathan. I hadn't a clue what they were talking about. I didn't know these two guys were the leads. So what was very strange is I then fly out back to England to do another job. And I'm walking down Piccadilly Circus and two Japanese girls come towards me and start waving their hands about and screaming, "Ah, Frank Devereaux! Frank Devereaux!" I thought they've gone raving mad. What's wrong with them? And of course, the show is huge in Japan. So I would be followed by screaming Japanese girls everywhere. It was the strangest experience. And then, of course, I would say to younger people I knew, have you ever heard of Supernatural? And they'd go, are you kidding me? You know, it's one of the most popular shows on American television. So it's very funny to get into something and you not know how high profile it is.
Yeah. And of course you ended up actually going to a lot of like specialised supernatural conventions as well.
I went to a few, yeah.
How was that? Because I've heard from other guests we've had in from the show, they were like, sometimes they can be very intense, but they're always good fun.
Yeah, it is very intense. It's very, I do a lot of conventions and I really enjoy them. But the really odd conventions are when it's about one singular thing. Because you look at everybody and everybody's just talking about the one show, you know. So I think that makes it super intense. They also have a thing when they do the supernatural shows that, and I don't know why this became a convention at the conventions, was that the actors who appear will do a show at the end of the convention, sing songs, maybe do a karaoke, tell some jokes, and they start about 8 o'clock, and everybody is absolutely slaughtered. So it's a messy thing, you know. And I was telling somebody this, and they said, yeah, you say everybody is slaughtered as if it's some bad thing on them. And they pulled out a video of me singing Born to Be Wild, absolutely off my trolley, and I went, oh my God, that is so embarrassing that exists. So when I say everyone, I mean everyone.
Because Supernatural, that has been said that it is one of the most fun, laid-back, just enjoyable sets to be on, and that the two lads are just the biggest tricksters, and they will always love to try and throw people off in the middle of a scene. So did you experience that?
I went back for my second episode, and I experienced firsthand, you know, that he was a bit of a trickster. So I decided to get my own back. There was a scene where he was up a big cherry picker, you know, trying to put a camera on top of a telegraph pole, and I was at the bottom of the cherry picker, and I just kept on going, "Hey, Jensen!" "Oh, stop doing that! Stop doing that!" I said, if ever you try any of your tricks on me, you're coming off this. And so I never had any trouble from him later.
I would love to have seen that actually, because some of the stories that we've heard from the two of them. We had James Marsters here not that long ago, and some of the stuff that they were doing while he was trying to do a scene was very, very not suitable for young children.
Yes, let your minds work on that for a little while, and imagine the most disgusting thing in the world you can, and that'll probably be only half of it.
Yeah, pretty much. And again, before we get to the big films, Doctor Who. Big episode recently with yourself, but you were also in the original series as well, so you're one of the few people who...
Well, I wouldn't say the original. I was 7 years old when the original season came out, but thank you anyway. No, I was in the first Colin Baker episode in 1984, and so it's interesting, they took 37 years to ask me to go back on the show. But a few people have interviewed me about the very first episodes of Colin Baker's. It's really weird hearing yourself echoing around the hall, isn't it? It was called The Twin Dilemma. And I've been interviewed by a number of people who, do podcasts about Doctor Who, and I always put them at ease by saying, sorry to the under 15-year-olds again, but I want to put you at your ease by saying that I am fully aware that The Twin Dilemma is regarded as the shittest episode of Doctor Who ever made. And then they go, oh, thank God for that. I thought I was going to have to break it in. So anyway, I started on the new one and met Jodie, who is an absolute delight. And she said, oh, Kevin, I hear you were in Doctor Who once before, she said. I said, yes, I was in Doctor Who in 1984 when you were 1 year old, and it was the shittest episode of Doctor Who ever. Good luck. God almighty. But fortunately, my second outing last year, it turned out to be a lot more fun, and people seemed to really, even people who weren't necessarily keen on Jodie's era, there were people who had funny ideas like that, but they seemed to have enjoyed Flux, that story, very much. And I've got a lot of really positive feedback from my character, Eustachius Jericho, so that's been fun.
You did, and it's one of those things where...
You're late! Stop causing a fuss and sit down.
With your performance, and with the fact that Jodie is departing at the end of this year, I was about to say next year, and I realised, no, it is 2022. But now people are saying, oh, do you know who would have been great? Yourself.
Well, my mate Peter Capaldi, I think, has already done the old Doctor, so I don't think there's room for another old Doctor. Although somebody, a guy who was really into Doctor Who, said that there was a theory amongst the Whovians that every time the Doctor regenerated, it was into somebody he'd already met. And there have been a few clues in the story about that. So it would have been possible that I'd be the new Doctor Who. But sadly, I'm going to give a terrible spoiler away, but if you haven't seen it by now, well, you deserve it. So, when somebody came up to me and said, oh, I loved you as Eustachius Jericho, so I can't believe they killed you at the end of the series. What? Who did that? And I said, well, unfortunately, it was me. I had to go to America, and I said, will you stop putting me in more episodes, and please kill me at the end of this next episode, because I've really got stuff I want to do. So it was my fault. I got myself topped.
I also love how you jumped in when I was going to say to you about that theory that, there is a way for you to come back, but now you're like, no, it's just not going to happen.
No.
Who would you like to play?
What's your theory about the way I could come back?
Well, exactly what you were saying, that there was a popular theory about how...
Oh, you knew that?
Yeah, that's literally... I was going to jump in, but I was like, nah, he's got it, it's all good.
I got it covered, yeah. Yeah, there's that weird theory. But people say that to me, and I say, but it doesn't really matter. It's a show about time travel. So, if you wanted to see Eustachius Jericho again, she's only got to go back to the 60s again. And there he'll be,
And with yourself in the role, hopefully, you'd go back?
Well, I am, for those of you who know and like Doctor Who, there's a company called Big Finish. There you go. Who do audiobooks of Doctor Who stories. I've done a number of them. And they've asked me if I will do a series of 6 audiobooks, or 6 audio plays about Eustachius Jericho. So I may be doing that later in the year.
Fantastic. And if you had to pick a new Doctor, who would you pick?
I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, there's massive, every time now Doctor Who or 007 is recast, there's obviously a lot of talk about diversity and stuff like that. I'm quite old-fashioned, really. I think that if it looks like sort of box ticking, then people get annoyed by it. I just hope it's somebody who does something totally different with it. Because that's what's always fun about a new Doctor. Exactly. It's not what you're expecting,
yeah. And I suppose now's the time that we mention Pirates of the Caribbean, which I think we can all agree that Gibbs is definitely one of the best characters in it.
What do you mean, one of the best characters?
There might be a sparrow that would try and claim that top title.
It's always that Jack Sparrow gets the billing just ahead of me, that swine.
So the call would have come in at a time when pirate films were very much not the go-to trend. So what was it about the film that made you kind of go, do you know what, this is the leap that I'm going to take a leap on this one?
Well, as I alluded earlier, just a few years earlier than that, I hadn't been in a film, so I stopped working and got some film credits. So that by the time that film came around, I had a few film credits that people thought he works in film. So I was starting to get more interviews, particularly for big American films. And in fact, I remember being on the bus going in to audition for the Green Goblin in Spider-Man. And I think I can remember saying to a friend of mine, there's no point in me doing this. They'll give it to someone like William Defoe or something. And he did it. So it came round to the audition for Pirates, and I'd been up for about 8, I suppose, parts in American films. And it was my birthday, a day in April 2002, a day that will live in infamy. I was in the back garden drinking a bottle of nice rosé wine that I like, and a friend of mine said to me, aren't you supposed to be at an audition today? I said, oh yeah, it's my birthday. I never get those American films, so I'm just not going to bother, I'm not going to go. She said, no, you've got to go, it's a ticket in the lottery, an American movie. And I said, well, I've had a bottle of wine now, I'm a bit drunk. So she said, well, it's for a pirate, it doesn't matter how drunk you are. Go along. So I went along, and she very kindly drove me. The woman said to me, the director says, just tell a story like a pirate. So I can't even remember what story I told, but he's going to be a bit of a storyteller, this fella. So I started to tell a story, and the next day, the director is in town, and they said the director wants to see you, and then they give me a speech about sea turtles, and he offered me the job on the spot. But I still thought, well, you know, a film based on a ride, what drugs have they been ingesting in Hollywood that they think this is a good idea? And I thought, you know, this is just going to be in the bargain bucket of the VHS, as it was. There were still VHSs.
I had it on VHS, actually.
Exactly. So I thought, this is not going to do any good. But then, to be honest, before we started, I see that people like Johnny Depp and Jeffrey Rush are on board, and I think, well, they know a bit more about film than I do, so maybe there'll be something in this film. I don't know. I don't think so, but I'll give it a bash. Anyway, I don't think anybody could have predicted within weeks of it opening. It was at the time, it was the biggest grossing film in history. Yeah, so it came as a shock to me, I'll tell you.
And it was filmed in around the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Was it the first 2 or first 3?
First 3.
Yeah, and then you moved abroad.
Well, we got bored with the Caribbean, so we decided to shoot. Yeah, it was just we've drunk all those drinks. So we did the 4th one in Hawaii, and then the last one in 2015 was in Australia.
So all the rum was gone, so you decided to go.
All the rum was gone, so we had to go get the rum in another country.
And with Gibbs, like the chemistry between yourself and Johnny Depp, that was clearly just from the offset, you guys had it down. And did it come naturally to you both, or was it just, you know, once you were in character and you kind of went through rehearsals and things like that, then you were like, okay, we got this?
Johnny's very similar to me. He's himself, and then he gets the costume on, and he's playful. So it's like we never had to work at it really. From the first scene we had was the scene where he gives me the plan and says, we've got to get the Black Pearl off of Barbossa. And I'm saying Barbossa is a CD man who would take fools like me. And we just had such fun doing it. I think at one point he turned to me and he said, isn't this silly? He said, because we were playing 2 drunk pirates in a big Hollywood movie. It just seemed daft, really. So it just always worked, really. And they always gave us some really nice scenes together, because they could see that the chemistry was there. And, I mean, it might have been, if the chemistry hadn't been there, that I would never have made another one, but I think it became pretty essential. What Mr. Gibbs became was he kept explaining the plot to Johnny Depp, to Jack Sparrow. He was explaining to him what was going on. I mean, without him, he'd be dead years ago.
In a lot of films or TV series, there's always one person that will always be explaining like what the plan is. So I always remember Giles in Buffy was kind of like that, and Gibbs was definitely the Giles to Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it ended up that I was only one of 3 people or 4 primates who were in all 5 films, because there was me, Johnny Depp, Jeffrey Rush, and the monkey. We're in all of them. I must tell you about this, by the way. I'm going to have to use another bad word, but it's absolutely essential. There were 2 monkeys, actually. There was a boy monkey who was the stunt monkey. He did all the stunts, running up ropes and things. And there was a girl monkey who was the acting monkey who had to go, oh, like that a lot. What a bitch she was. One of the vilest tempered creatures I've ever worked with. And I've worked with a lot of very vile actresses, but this one was the worst one ever. And you could see the male monkey going, oh God, she's such a letdown to our species. She really is. So there's 5 of us really who've been in all 5 movies.
I love it. And for Gibbs, one of his, maybe not his first one, because of course he's in the flashback in the opening scene of The Black Pearl, but then he's in that iconic moment where he is just being chucked water over him.
The pigs, yeah.
The pigs.
Well, I have 2 stories about that. One is that the guy at the beginning, that came about as a misunderstanding. That was a completely different character. Just a pirate, just a naval guy. And what they do is, when you start a film, you'll go and do a read-through of it, and they've cast all the leading actors, but, you know, the day players, the guys who are going to come in for a day, they haven't been cast yet. So they get us to read a load of other little parts, you know, which is very enjoyable. And they asked me to read that guy at the beginning, the sailor, as he was called. But because I'm so thick and I never listen to anything anybody ever says to me, I didn't hear that bit, so I read it like Mr. Gibbs. And then I felt a bit stupid, actually, and then the writer came up and went, isn't that great? If he's Mr. Gibbs, he's this Navy guy who is so superstitious and so scared of pirates that the only way he can get over it is to become a pirate himself. And then that gave us the idea that he would be cashiered out of the Navy, so it gave us the idea for the costume, that they would rip your sleeves off, and they'd rip all your buttons off. So basically I had a naval uniform as a pirate, but as a cashiered Navy man. That was good. Now, the first scene that Mr. Gibbs actually had with the pigs, well, it was terrible because they had 3 sizes of pigs. They had giant pigs, and they had medium-sized pigs, and they had little baby pigs that are like the ones in the ride. Well, the little baby pigs were about as excited as I was to be in a major Hollywood movie, so they would not calm down. The big pigs just kept farting, really. It was just impossible. It was unpleasant.
So that was the smell?
That was the smell. That was for the smell. Oh yeah, fair enough. So then we got the middle pigs, and they were all right. But they were still quite excitable in the lights and stuff. So I said to Gore Verbinski, look, I said, I'll do you a favour. I said, if you want to go off and shoot something else, I'll just lie with the pigs, and I'll make them comfortable, and I had young children at the time. I'll make them comfortable, and I'll get them to sleep, like I get my young kids to sleep. So my grandma, who was from Dublin, used to sing a little song to me that I sang to my kids, and I sang to the pigs, and it goes something like this. Go to sleep, my piggies, close your piggy eyes. Angels up above you, smiling down at piggies from the skies. Great big moon is shining, stars begin to peep. Whoa, it's time for little baby piggies to go to sleep. That didn't work. Thank you very much. So then I tried the other one that my granddad used to sing to me that went, ah, baby boo, I'll bash you if you don't go to sleep, for you got daddy. Put him in a sack, slap his little back if he don't go to sleep for his daddy. That worked. And so I said to somebody, I said, tell the director that the pigs are asleep. So I was lying there, by the way, in mud and pig poo by this point. And so the director came back. Of course, we all forgot the first thing to do is Orlando Bloom throws a bucket of water over me. So the pigs wake up. So we had to wait another hour while I got the pigs back to sleep again. And then we would do another shot. So it took all night to shoot. Sorry, that story went on a bit too long. I'm sorry about that, but I was reliving it as I was doing it.
When you meet fans, what is the most common Gibbs line that they would probably say to you? Because he had a few good ones.
Take what you can, give nothing back is a good one. I'm often asked by people, particularly my students when I teach, they're nervous at first about talking about it because they think it'd be unprofessional, but then somebody will break and say, what's your favourite Mr. Gibbs line? And my favourite Mr. Gibbs line is, slap me thrice and hand me to me mama, it's Jack. That's what I like. And I also like that scene because if you go home and watch that film again, maybe tonight, I don't know, we all had these false teeth, that were very badly stained. Well, I have a terrible gag reflex. So you can imagine COVID has been a blooming nightmare for me with all that testing. So it would make me gag putting these things in my teeth. So I would get them to cut them down more and more. So eventually they were only just being gripped by my canines here. But it made them very dodgy and very easy to fall out. And there is, when I say slap me thrice and hand me to me mama, it's Jack, I walk off screen going Jack. And just as I leave the screen, my teeth fly out and leave the scene just before I do. And they didn't notice, so it's still in the film. I'd love to get a copy of it and put a little circle following my teeth as they fly out camera right. I swear that's true.
I'm definitely going to be watching that to look forward to.
Absolutely. And I think I go something like...
There's been a lot of talk recently of another Pirates film coming, but minus Johnny Depp. So would you be, if you were called to go back without Johnny, would you go?
Well, first of all, let me say that I read these things all the time. I don't know whether any of that is true or not. I don't think anybody's ever suggested that somebody else would play Jack Sparrow. I think that would be stupid. There has been talk about, it being another story in the Pirates of the Caribbean world. And I have to say about that I think it's quite interesting and bizarre that the Pirates franchise, of course, predates Marvel, and things that, Marvel is a universe in which they do lots of different stuff. But Pirates comes from a time when the franchises were very linear. One story after another. So I think it would be perfectly viable to do stories that had other characters in them. As far as if I was to do one and Jack wasn't in it, my bank manager tells me I'd have to do it anyway. I don't know, I mean, if Jack wasn't in it, I very much doubt that Mr. Gibbs would be in it either. But if they did ask me to be, I've got great ideas. I think they should, I thought that a great idea for the film would be searching for Jack. And two nice young actors playing these two new characters have to try to find Jack Sparrow. So who would they go to help them find Jack Sparrow? Mr. Gibbs. Well, it wouldn't be the bloody pigs, would it?
Or, do you know what I was thinking? A Disney Plus series on Mr. Gibbs and how he went from the Navy to
I've been begging them to do that for years. I suggested to Jerry Bruckheimer, I said, Stories from the Caribbean, it's called. So I only have to turn up for the first 5 minutes every week and go, did I ever tell you about the time that I met this? And then they do an hour's program. And at the end I say, thank you very much. See you next week. Is the check in the post. That's what I like. So that would be my ideal television.
I think I'd watch. Would everybody else watch that? I'd watch that.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Disney
Write your letters to Dear Mr. Disney.
Right, well I think it's time to open up to the floor. So for those of you who haven't been in yet, we have 2 microphones set up. So if you want to ask a question, we have someone running, or nearly running, strolling, okay.
Where are the microphones?
So they're just on either side here. Awesome, so, young man over here on my left.
Oh, I see the microphones. Hello, young man.
Hi, I have 2 questions, but I might ask a third one if one comes up. So the first one is, I want to be an actor when I'm older. Do you have any tips for acting? And then the second one is, what was your favourite movie to work on?
Well, my tip to you as an actor, when you start to act, is always be very, very well prepared, but then be very flexible to be able to change it if someone doesn't think you should do something different. And I would also say, you know, when you read a script and you see a part, just do what you want to do with it. Don't try to think what somebody else would like to do with it, because the biggest thing you have is being you and being original. So always do that. What was the second question? Oh yeah, don't go senile while you're on stage is another one. What's that?
What was your favourite movie? And then another one is, who's your favourite actor to work with?
Okay, well, I always like to say, particularly to my students, I'm very lucky, you know, not to be a film star, but to be a very, what we call a jobbing working actor. So I'm very lucky to be able to say that my favourite job is always the next one that I'm going to do. Because I'm lucky enough after 50 years to, you know, to still be offered parts. I've never worked with anybody quite as good as me, so I can't answer the third question. Oh, and be humble and modest.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, son.
Awesome, so what we'll do is we'll go alternate over here. So next question's on this side.
So a lot of parts of the Caribbean was filmed like at sea because you're pirates. Was there any challenges with that, or what was that like?
Terrible. Particularly on the first one, because they didn't build a real Black Pearl until the second film. So the Black Pearl in the first film was a flat-bottomed barge, just with a deck on it, and they CGI'd the rest in. Well, boats are built like that, so they cut through the water, which makes for a very comfortable ride. But a barge feels every wave going. So there were 2 places you didn't want to be on that set. One was near the porta potties at the back of the loo, and the other was near the smell of the sausages that they were giving you for lunch up at the front of the boat. I've never seen such a sick bunch of people in my life. Fortunately, I discovered the joys of Dramamine, which is a seasickness pill, which I'm very lucky doesn't make me as sleepy as it makes a lot of people. So I would have a Dramamine about an hour before going on the ship, and I was perfectly fine. But it's not a pleasant environment, and it must have been even worse back in the day, when pirates were literally on those ships for months on end. God knows what sort of state they got into. Oh, it doesn't bear thinking about, really, does it? But thank you for the question.
All right, over this side.
Hello.
Hello again.
Oh, thank you for remembering me. You were talking about Doctor Who earlier, and I was wondering kind of what were the major differences you found in making Doctor Who in the 80s and Doctor Who in 2010s? And if it's not too cheeky, what are the Doctors like?
All right. Well, the difference is, that's a very good question, because when I was making it in '84, in fact, when I started out in television in the 70s, filming on multi-cameras in studios was a really weird hybrid between the theatre and the screen. By the time, of course, I came around to shooting Doctor Who last year, television has now become a completely filmic experience. It has the values of film, it has the cinematography, it has the design, it has the look of film. So that was very different. Back in '84, they were just shaky old sets, and we would rehearse it for a week and then film it for 3 hours on Saturday night. It was a completely different experience. I never knew William Hartnell. I knew Patrick Troughton, lovely fella. I never met Pertwee. I never met Tom Baker. Not Jim Davison. What's his name? Jim Davison is that dreadful comedian. Peter Davison, very nice man. Colin, an absolute diamond. Sylvester, one of the nicest people you could ever meet. I've only met Eccleston. It's brilliant that I'm remembering them all, isn't it?
I'm impressed. I've forgotten half
met
of them.
Eccleston once. He was lovely. David Tennant, I've done a few of these audio books with. Lovely chap. Never met Matt Smith. Peter Capaldi I've known for 30 years. And Jodie was a joy. And I think that's all the doctors.
You got them all. I was counting in my head.
You got them all. There was 13, wasn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Bravo.
Thank you. My fiance loves the Twin Dilemma, by the way.
Oh, does she? Don't tell her it's the shittest episode. It's the shittest episode.
Awesome. Yeah, back over this side.
Hi. My question is, what, in your opinion, what's the most exciting part of the Caribbean and why?
Which film?
Any of them?
Yeah, the second one. You've got to say, why is that?
No, the Dead Man's Chest. I know it.
Yeah, I know. But you've got to say, why is it the most exciting?
Why is it the most exciting?
Because it's got the most Mr. Gibbs in it.
My thoughts exactly.
Well done, son. Thank you. I really like it. I think it's one of the best sequels I've ever seen as well. It is undoubtedly true that, 4 and 5 are okay films, but they're not necessarily the best movies ever made. The third one, At World's End, is really a series of big set pieces. It's not that coherent story. It's amazing and everything, but it's not as good as a story as the first two.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought the second one was a really, really good follow-up, particularly as the first film was so hard to top and to follow. So.
Yeah. And is it true that actually none of you knew what that twist ending was going to be?
No. I hate telling people this. But no, as if we were going to be surprised by Geoffrey Rush coming down the stairs when we could see him standing at the top of it. And have you never heard of rehearsals? Have you never heard of saying, God, this is a pretty dull ending to the film, isn't it? No, it's a load of rubbish. I don't know who put
Because that rumour was going around again recently, so I was just like, hang on a minute.
Yeah, but they also say I'm the next Doctor Who, so you can't believe anything that anybody says, you know what I mean?
Journalists.
Yeah.
Say it as
Bloody
a journalist.
journalists. I blame the social media.
Alright, back over this side.
Me?
Hello.
Oh, hi. It's great to meet you. What's your favourite working with Paris Carey with Johnny Depp in Dead Man's World's End?
Dead Man's World's End?
Yeah, World's End.
Oh, in World's End. Sorry, what's the question?
World's End. What's the favourite part in World's End?
My favourite part?
Yeah.
I really thought that that whole, the Bayou, with all the people with the lights as we were going to Tia Dharma's shack, that was one of the most amazing sets I've ever worked on. It was brilliant, it was so detailed, and I absolutely loved it. I think that was my favourite part of that film.
Last question is, what's your favorite part of working with the guy who will play Will Turner? Well, how's it work with?
Orlando.
Yeah.
Great. It was great. He was a very young, inexperienced actor at the time, and it was really nice to work with him. I had an ex-girlfriend who had trained him,
Nice.
actually, at the Webber Douglas School, I think it was. But an up-and-coming young lad. It was interesting to see both him and Kira learn so much about their craft over those 3 films, and learn their craft they did, and they were really willing to listen and really willing to find out how to be the best actors they could be.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, because I think Orlando had just come off filming Lord of the Rings when he went straight to film Pirates of the Caribbean. Or something like
Yes,
that.
he had, straight away. So, and I don't think that,
Don't think Lord of the Rings had come out at that point.
I don't think it had. So he was doubly catapulted to fame in a very, very swift fashion. So must be an extraordinary thing to deal with as a young man. I can't imagine that I would have dealt with it as well as he has.
Yeah, for sure. Next over here.
Hello. Hello.
Oh, hi again. How are you? Ryan.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Thanks for remembering. So you wrote a book, right? The one
Yes.
I got signed up, yeah.
Thanks for plugging that.
It's I had two questions about it. It was
Sure.
what inspired you to write the book, and
I love science fiction, and I love comedy writing, and it was about, I wrote it quite a long time ago. I just haven't had time to do anything with it. I've been so busy the last few years. And I just thought I would love to be able to do that. Wouldn't it be great to actually start a novel and finish it? It's a bloody hard thing to do because there's so much stuff you have to put in it, you know. A script is just people talking to each other, but you've got to, you know, really create the scenes with a novel. But that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to achieve that before I started pushing up daisies. And I have achieved it, and it's very, very inexpensive to get yourself a signed copy out in the front. His name's Kevin McNally, he's in Pirates of the Caribbean, and he'll sign you a copy of his book. I've only sold 2 so far, the second one was to him. That's why I remembered your name.
thanks. The second question in relation to that was if there's any movies getting a book adaptation, what series would you like to be a part of?
I would like there to be a film version of my book that you bought this afternoon, Sons of Sol, please, and I'd like to direct it. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, back over this side.
Hello. My question is, as an actor, how much input do you have in what happens to the character? Like, anything you have worked with?
Well, I mean, it depends. Initially, not much. But if you're doing a series of films or you're doing a television series, any writers worth their salt will know what your strengths are or something that you might bring to the character they haven't thought of, and then that will slowly get absorbed into the process. I quite like getting involved with, you know, maybe changing the writing a little bit, thinking about how things are shot. So, you know, it depends. If it's just a one-off film, you know, it's already done and there and done and dusted. But when things go on longer, of course, you have more of an input into them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Over this side.
Oh, it's the giggler. Hello.
Sorry. Who was the most unpleasant actor or actress you've worked with?
It was... and I hated them. I've been very lucky not really to have come across much of that. And largely I might say because I simply wouldn't put up with it. You know, if people want to be, I'm sorry to the young people in the audience, but if people want to be assholes, they can do it on their own time and not on mine, thank you very much. So I haven't had any trouble. I have had to take a couple of actors aside and speak to them about their attitude, yeah. But I'm not giving you any names, because it's unprofessional.
All right.
I must say to you, actually, I do say this to young actors, about being very careful when they start out, you know, if they start getting nice parts and start getting ahead of themselves a little bit, and their heads start to swell a little bit. I always say to them, listen, if anybody comes to me and says, well, I'm thinking of casting this young actor in this role, and if you've given me jip or I've seen you be rude to people, I don't have to diss you. When that producer says to me, what do you think of this young actor you just worked with? All I've got to do is go, like that. And they'll go, all right, okay, got it. We're not going to work with him. So it's, if you want to be an asshole, people are going to let people know, you know, so they don't get on very well in the business. But thank you for the question.
All right.
And I'm glad to stop you giggling as well. Next.
Who was your favorite actor to work with?
Well, that's a very hard question to answer, but I will tell you that I grew up with a series of acting role models who were the generation before me. And I got to work with a few of them. And there were people I worked with, Peter O'Toole, if you look up who he is, and Richard Harris I got to work with, who was one of two of my favourite of Irish descent actors. I mean, actually, Richard was Irish, but Peter was born in Leeds, but like me, he's a plastic paddy, so he's sort of vaguely acceptable. So working with them was a huge thrill for me, particularly Richard Harris, who was a gentleman, and I knew him for the rest of his life until he died in 2002. You youngsters will know him as the first Dumbledore in the first Harry Potter film. But sadly, he died before the making of the second one. So that was a great thrill for me.
And another question is, if you could work with any actor, who would it be?
I'd love to work with one of the following three people, because they were the stars of the American independent film scene in the 1970s when I was just leaving drama school and working, and it's either Jack Nicholson, Robert De Niro or Al Pacino would be some guys I'd like to work with. I think I'm a bit late with Jack because I think he's retired, but I think Al Pacino and Robert De Niro might have a few more films in them yet.
We're on to Martin Scorsese, because I'm sure they'll be working with him for a little while longer.
They certainly will, yeah. So maybe I ought to write Martin a letter, I don't know. Could you all write Martin Scorsese a letter and tell him you'd really like to see me in one of his films?
I think we could do
They're
that.
very kind of you. And the person who writes the best letter gets a free copy of my book.
All right.
But you have to pay for a big sign.
I think we've got time for one more question.
Hi, I was just wondering if there was anybody who ever told you that like you couldn't be an actor, or like you wouldn't get far in like achieving your dreams.
Yes, my headmaster at school. I've got, it was very funny actually. I went into my sixth form and I was working in the local theatre. I'd got a job as an actor in the theatre, and I was doing about 5 courses for A-level, and I couldn't do them in rehearsal, so I cut them down to 3 courses. And then I realised I couldn't really do that, so I wanted to cut it down to 2 courses. So I went to see the headmaster and I said, look, you know, the work in the theatre is really taking up a lot of my time, but I really do want to continue with my studies, so can I just cut down to 2 subjects? And he said, oh, McNally, he said, just forget that. You're never going to make it anywhere. You're never going to make it as an actor. You don't concentrate enough. You're lazy. You're terrible at rugby. I don't know why he brought that up for some bloody reason. And then he said, so no, either you do the 3 or you leave the school. And I went, all right, thanks very much. I went back to my classroom, got my books, and I left. And I never looked back. It was a great day, actually. I loved it. Picking my book up, the teacher saying, sit down, McNally. And I said, no, I don't attend here anymore. The headmaster just told me.
What a story. So before we let you go, this is the moment where I was going to plug the book. So tell us.
You didn't think I'd get in there before you, did you?
I should have known. So just before we let you go, just quick synopsis. What's it about?
It's about 2 young men in the future who invent a fantastic machine for rockets. It's safe, it's fast, and it will get good people from colony to colony, and everybody wants it. Unfortunately, very few people want to pay for it. So it's a cat and mouse adventure across the solar system as they're abducted, put into slave labor, and in their quest to become multi-gazillionaires with this fantastic rocket, and they meet some of the vilest people in the solar system.
Sounds thrilling. So folks, if you want, you can get a copy of it signed by Kevin downstairs, but for now, ladies and gentlemen, Kevin McNally.
Thank you. Kevin McNally, book.